Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Internet Riding Buddies podcast, the world's premier, most bestest, and superest fantasticest ADV and dual sport, adventure, motorcycle camping, and just general shenanigans nerd stuff podcast on the whole internets. Yes, so it is I, the Dork in the Road, and with me as always is Grace.
The graceful renegade is here.
The
Woohoo!
graceful Renagade. And today we're testing out some new recording software and, well, we're trying, but we're supposed to start 45 minutes ago, but Grace decided to just not hook up her webcam. So she looks like that.
Yeah, I'm currently frozen and now I'm back. But yes, unfortunately, when you have an older MacBook Air, it doesn't...
Well, this is a great, very timely example of what I was talking about.
Am I frozen?
You were, and now you're not.
Okay.
So we're fundraising to buy Grace a new computer because I'm allowed to put my face through the screen. And it's a little frustrating for everyone involved. But yeah, so of the two of us, I know I'm not the one you want to see in HD, but suck it today. We'll get it figured out for next week.
I don't know, Ben, your eyes are so blue. I know I've told you this the last 2 days, but with the HD, it's like extra blue. And I don't think anyone's going to mind.
Oh. Stop falling in love with me.
I know. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
I've had so many comments saying I have a crush on you. I was just like, I think you guys got that backwards.
Yeah, I do love Ben. Those blue eyes. What can I say?
Yeah, I think I got those new colored contacts.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's all about lighting. None of you listening can see.
No.
Just imagine like two crystal clear glacier-fed rivers in the pristine
exactly what it looks
Alaskan mountains.
Yeah, 100%.
Staring into your soul.
Yeah, when Ben stares at you, it is like he's staring into your soul, FYI, if you have not experienced it. There's times where his gaze will find you and you just feel your whole inside crushed down. It's insane.
I've never heard that before. That's a little terrifying, and I will try to use my power responsibly. Anyway, enough opening banter for this episode. Let's talk about rallies. So as I'm sure many of you know, the Giant Loop Ride, which is a rally, registration just opened, and that has led to a lot of conversations about scheduling events for this year, what events people are going to. People seem to be putting their calendars together right now. It is, after all, the second week of the year, and of course we're all looking forward to when the weather isn't garbage and thinking about how much fun we're going to have this summer. And so it seemed like an appropriate time to talk about both just kind of rallies in general, what to expect at a rally, what rallies we like, what rallies we've been to, and just kind of the experience. And also, I think a lot of people have anxiety about going to rallies they haven't been to, or going to rallies at all if they've never been to one, and going by themselves. I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
So we're just going to talk about motorcycle rallies, and by rallies we mean, well, actually that's my first topic. So Grace, what is a motorcycle rally? What happens at a motorcycle rally?
Ooh, so for those of you who have not been to a motorcycle rally, it is usually a weekend-long event. So it's multi-days. Usually there's an arrival day, then you have 1 to 3 days of riding, and then there is a final kind of departure day. And most of the time at these rallies, you are either camping or in an RV or a tent, like a rooftop tent. Sometimes there's cabins. It just depends on whether you are in the middle of nowhere at a rally or you're in a bougie rally with cabins. Yeah, and you show up, you kind of set up camp, you get to mingle with other riders, you get to match up and ride with other people. You get to also see celebrities like Ben, who are there to explore and have a good time. And really, it's just kind of a fun opportunity to meet other riders that kind of come from all over and just enjoy being outside and really enjoy being on two wheels.
Yeah, and they're usually situated in some place with a lot of cool riding around it. Like Touratech is in the Washington Mountains, right off actually the Washington BDR. Tons of cool peaks and stuff that are easily accessible. Giant Loop Rally is in southeastern Oregon, where you're 2 hours from everything, but you're close to the Alvord Desert. You're close to, there's mountains and lots of forest stuff out there. So it's really cool to go in, sit, meet people, go riding. It's like Giant Loop is a great example, and it's a unique example, I think. And hashtag sponsored, but not really. They didn't pay me to make this video. I just kind of work for them, so I know this rally well. But because it's at that hot springs, it's at the Crystal Crane Hot Springs, and they're actually really nice, really well developed. So it's really cool to go ride during the day. get all dusty and nasty because you're out in the desert, and then you can just plop into the hot springs and chill out, relax. Some people carry beers in there, and you're not supposed to, but cans only, please. And then hang out around the campfire with your friends and rinse and repeat with some presentations and visiting vendors and stuff along the way. And sometimes there's giveaways.
Yeah, there's usually a raffle. I think at almost every rally I've been to, other than the really crusty ones that are kind of really isolated and in the middle of nowhere, there's usually always a rally. There's usually kind of like a bonfire and a welcome time, depending on the theme of the rally, because sometimes rallies do have themes. Like the ADV Rally in Julian, California is a giant scavenger hunt. So you break up into teams and do different ADV rides. It's usually a really fun time. It's one of my favorite rallies of the year. Giant Loop is more of a search and destroy. There's so much good terrain out there. And being in southeastern Oregon, you can do things like go ride through the Steens Mountains, or you can go out to the Alvord, or you can go up and into the high desert. It's really wonderful. So it just depends on what kind of rally you're at. And you just get very different opportunities to meet people, meet other riders, and to just get out and enjoy yourself, really.
Yeah, damn, you're so good at segues. Did you even look at my notes? I don't think you did.
I did. Yeah.
Oh, so your segue. Okay, I was going to say you're so talented, but
I do research. Hello.
Oh man, wow, she preps. This is
just because my computer doesn't work doesn't mean I'm not prepared. I'm ready to rock.
Right, because getting your computer going doesn't count as preparation. Anyway, so there are. So it's good that you talked about different types of rallies in different locations, because I think there's an important distinction there, because I really think, at least based on the ones I've been to, there's two, maybe three types, one sort of subset of the smaller, but there's the big rallies, right? Like Touratech, Giant Loop, where there are hundreds of people during the day, hundreds, or not hundreds, like tens of vendors, and you don't really know everybody because it's a huge event, right? Tons of people, you run into people but you're not like hanging out with everybody there. And then there are the smaller rallies, campouts. So a good example of that is Critter Moto's Get Lost Find Yourself rally last year, or, not to toot my own horn, but the Dork campout, which I purposefully made a super low key, like, there was only 30 people. And at those smaller rallies, when you go, you really meet everyone, and you tend to hang out around the same campfire every night. And there's still like I had swag I gave away. Chris did a bunch of raffles. Like, there's still stuff like that, but so there's different types, and I think that's an important thing to look at. I would say that I went to the Pacific Northwest Dual Sports Summer Opener a couple years ago. There's a video on my channel. That was kind of in between, where the atmosphere was more smaller rally, but there was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
The other thing we didn't talk about was moto games and events. There's often
just going to say, don't forget games.
Okay, you talk about it.
Oh, well, okay. I'm terrible at the moto games, but they're so much fun because it's kind of like a testing your skill set, but you also get to cheer on or boo and berate your friends. And it's like, basically trying to go as slow as possible, or pick things up off the ground, or try and throw water balloons, that type of thing, where it's very fun to kind of compete with each other, and a great way, again, to just like test your riding skills and see if you really can feather your clutch pretty well, or if you're toppling over. And usually there's costumes involved. You can see the Giant Loop ride from last year for that one, or lack thereof costumes, I should say. Thank you, Jim and Ryan. But yeah, it's always kind of my favorite part is just kind of watching everybody compete, because everyone has such a good time and everyone is laughing the whole time.
Yeah, and what's great is the events are not typically like you have to be the world's best rider. Like a slow race, the whole point of it is to get to the finish line last.
Yeah.
And great example. Best one I ever saw, and this is a total cheat, but it was at the Pacific Northwest Dual Sport Summer Opener. Paul Neff was there because he lives nearby, and Paul Neff was training for Dakar at the time. So, he can ride. And he just did a track stand. He just stopped and was just balancing there for, I swear to God, a minute, maybe two, and everyone else was like done. And he's like, "Oh, I guess I'll go now." And he like rode up. Now to be fair to Paul, and he graciously at the end was like, "Obviously, I'm not competing. I just wanted, He's like, "So let the second place person win or whatever," because what a ringer. But that was something to see.
I'm sure.
It was like, you're defying gravity. Whoa.
Yeah. And you do occasionally have people like riders at that level at these events, like. obviously you do have the YouTube stars like Ben showing
Stop
up, hanging
saying
out,
that. You're
and
making me uncomfortable.
sorry, YouTube personalities. Maybe that's a little more comfortable for
Yeah.
Ben. But you do also have some of these big time riders that come out. Like I know Vicky Golden was at the ADV Fest last year in Mojave, and I didn't get a chance to be there, but she's like a hero of mine, and I love watching her ride. She's an unbelievable rider. So occasionally you do get those kind of like big time, really skilled superstars that show up. And it's a great opportunity to kind of meet them and hear what they do, hear their stories, and just connect with them and realize that, you know, just like you, they're a human being that likes to be on a motorcycle. It's awesome.
Yeah, Jocelyn Snow was at Get on ADV Fest last year. Donnie Reddington is always at Touratech. What's the guy that Jimmy almost said Neutron? That isn't it.
Jimmy Neutron doesn't ride
I can't
motorcycles.
think
I
of the guy that
don't
runs
think.
all the games at Jimmy Lewis, the guy that
Lewis,
runs all the
yeah,
games at Touratech and just makes the rules up as he goes, which is super confusing and also hilarious once you sort of realize what's happening.
yeah,
That's a great point about because like literally just they're just there enjoying the rally just like you.
yeah.
It's not like there's some separate celebrity section or like
No,
we're just wandering around talking to people. I'm usually sitting by a campfire drinking a beverage or two.
yep,
That is that is my favorite part, honestly, of going to things like that. So a big distinction between the big events and the small events. I think maybe I sort of glossed over it, but at the small events, you sort of know everybody. Like you'll meet
yeah,
everyone. The smaller campouts or rallies I've been to, we all sat around the same campfire at night, right? It was a big circle, 30 people in it or whatever. But at the big rallies, you kind of just go off to your own area with your own people because literally Touratech, it's a giant cow pasture full of RVs and stuff like that. And so there are distinctions there, and you'll know which rallies are big because they're the ones with the big websites and the big fees.
right.
And the big rallies also have a lot of stuff going on, like test rides. Often there'll be vendors there. An example, like I went to Touratech last year, and I ended up riding I took my 300L rally. I rode it for I think 2 hours one day because I was just doing test rides. Like I test rode several bikes and just hanging out and talking to people and same thing. I went on to my first year at Get on ADV Fest. It was like, why did I even bring my DRZ? I didn't get it out for
Yeah,
more than like 45 minutes, and I hauled it all the way 20 hours of driving
yeah.
down
Well,
there. But
I think that is kind of the bonus of, and that's something that I think gets glossed over with rallies sometimes is if you are going to a bigger rally, obviously this isn't at the smaller ones as much, but with the bigger rallies, you have the opportunity to ride a lot of motorcycles if you want to, which if you are new to ADV is a great opportunity to learn what type of bike you actually like. You know,
mm-hmm.
there's kind of a standard subset of motorcycles for dual sport and ADV that are good intro bikes, but really getting your second bike and getting that like kind of really sweet spot of how you like to ride and what fits you is super important. So having the opportunity to demo, to also be able to talk to the reps of the different motorcycle brands and manufacturers is really cool. And a lot of my favorite parts of the rallies are getting out and riding different motorcycles. Like I loved Ben and Trav got out on a Ural last year, and
That was
it
fun.
was so funny just to watch them rip around and like, and when else are you gonna ride a Ural around? Like very rarely. So
Yeah.
getting to like get out with your buddies and just enjoy and try something new is always great.
Well, you make a great point, and it reminds me of another one. So let me first your great point. Reminds me of a great point is that at these rallies, you almost always have the opportunity to actually take these bikes off the pavement, which is not an opportunity that you generally get in a regular test ride or even at a demo day event. Like it's only at these events that I've ever had the opportunity to take a new bike off road, and it kind of depends on who you get and who's in your group because Kleider took us out, and once the two guys that were not as good crashed and they had to go back, he was just like, "Okay, well, you're good." And we just went. There was another God. Who was it? Oh, it was Alid from Triumph. This has happened a couple
Yeah.
times. He'll be like, "You guys seem like you know what you're doing," and he's just gone. Like I literally did 60 miles an hour through the Mojave Desert on a brand new Triumph Tiger 900 that was not mine on a manufacturer sanctioned test ride. It's cool to have those opportunities, but don't feel like that's what's going to happen every time because those guys are always so good at like looking at the group and kind of evaluating the pace and letting the people that
Yeah.
want to go a little faster. But the other point that you reminded me of is these rallies are a great place, particularly the big ones, to get some training. So if you are new to off-road, and we recommend, I mean, I do, I think Grace does too, but really the best investment you can make is training, particularly if you came to off-road riding later in life.
Yeah.
So if you grew up riding dirt bikes, you probably have the confidence and sort of, not that you can't benefit. Like every time I go to a training, I get something new. But it's particularly if you're just like me. Like I started riding when I was like 38 years old, and was I was like, I want to ride off road, but I had no idea what the hell I was doing, and I built so many bad habits and put myself in. I look back at my old crashes and I'm like, why the hell did you fall off the bike? Like I literally was just like, oh, I'm crashing, and let go. Like so many times that like it was just like, just keep riding, you idiot. But getting that training can really, I think I jumped ahead. Like I was as good, or I watched people at the training I did with Tyler and Ride Adventures be as good at the end of the second day as I was after a year or two of riding.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that is such a good point, Ben. I was actually really fortunate enough that I guess it was a year and a half ago now. It was the first get on in South Dakota that I did for Revzilla. I did the Rawhide Intermediate training day that they provided there, and it was a total blast. Like it's usually about 6 hours. It goes the full day, and this is actually really good for me because I had not really done much off-road riding since my accident, which had been about a month before. So I was very much like in my own head, and really like I have the skill set to ride. It's just the confidence was completely gone. So taking a day to kind of get out with an instructor that can point out to you how to shift your body weight, how to get more comfortable doing certain maneuvers with the bike, and also just to like kind of remind you that like we all drop bikes, we all make mistakes. It's kind of just a part of ADV riding. It's such a good opportunity to just grow. And yeah, every time I've done a training, I've learned something. I usually do one or two a year. And I usually just pop into the intermediate one every time because I like kind of sticking in that middle level. That's my comfort zone and where I'm probably going to stick. But it's so, so good. And almost all of these rallies now offer a training of sorts. And it's really cool because you get exposed to a lot of different teaching styles and a lot of different instruction.
Well, one of my favorite things you learn, so you learn confidence, you learn that everybody drops their bike, but you also learn that anytime you drop your bike, 5 people instantly appear to help you pick it up. And that
Yeah.
is how this community is. It honestly reminds me, this might be an out of left field reference, but I spent a lot of time in mosh pits at punk shows in my younger years. And like, somebody goes down in a mosh pit and like, it could be the craziest, most intense, violent circle pit you've ever seen. Someone goes down, there's a circle of people around them protecting them while somebody else is lifting them off the ground. Like immediately, like it's that shared camaraderie and community.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I love to see, kind of that light bulb come on with people when I'm at these trainings, is just like, oh man, I'm never alone out here. Like it doesn't matter if I drop my bike because I don't have to pick it up by myself. Like,
Oh yeah. I mean, anytime, obviously I think for a girl it's a little bit different because there's fewer of us, and usually if we're out riding with a group of dudes, you guys are all watching us like hawks just to make sure we're doing okay, which I appreciate so
that
much
sounds
about the
creepy.
community.
You said
Well,
that in a
not in a
creepy
bad
way.
way, just more in like we've got a girl with us, and we want to make sure we're there in case. I mean, because almost every time I've dropped my bike and I'm with a group of guys, before I can even like get up
Yeah.
myself, I've got
Yeah.
3 guys over there pulling my bike up for me, and it's amazing. I mean, that's one of the great things about the ADV community, and it's just everybody's there for each other because everybody just wants to have a good time and ride outside and enjoy themselves. And if somebody goes down, it's like, nice. Hopefully it's not me next. Dust you off, put you back on, and we're off again.
Right. That's not to say people don't get hurt, but 99% of the time
Yeah.
it's like, man, like
Yeah.
I did something
Oops.
dumb and I stepped off, at 2 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
haha, funny, pat you on the back. Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, Grace, what rallies have you been to? Let's talk about our experiences.
What rallies have I been to? I have been to the Giant Loop rally. It is, even though I've been an ambassador for Giant Loop for the last few years, it's, I think, my favorite rally of all because it's a big rally that feels small. And that's just due to the fact that we're all kind of camped out in one location in Crane Hot Springs. It's wonderful. I love it. I've done the ADV Get On Fest with Revzilla every year. I've done both, other than Mojave this last year. They're very fun. They're great opportunities to meet vendors, to kind of talk about products, ride different bikes, like Ben and I have already talked about. I also really like being in South Dakota. It's just a really interesting change of pace. You get a lot more rolling hills. You got some interesting mountains, and the actual dirt you're riding through, it's a lot stickier than it is up in the Pacific Northwest. So I enjoy that quite a bit. The scenery also is great. Plus, it's near Deadwood, which if you're a Deadwood fan or a Deadwood nerd like I am, it's really cool to go see that old town. Other than that, I have really only done the ADV scavenger hunt, the ADV rally in Julian, California. I think those are my standards for the year, pretty much every year. My goal for this year is to do the Unrally in the Alvord as well, which I'm really excited about. And I'm going to try and make it to Touratech this year. Third time's a charm. I've wanted to go the last 2 years, but work has interfered both times. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, get to be there this year, get to see people and enjoy that rally. But
Well, I need
Ben?
you to go because I don't think Trav's going. So
Okay, well, I guess I'm
he got a
going then.
real job like a loser. Also, he's not going to be riding yet, or he's going to be just started riding.
Yeah.
So let's see. I've been to Giant Loop. Obviously, that was my first rally and the one I've been to the most. Touratech, a couple of 3 or 4 times now. And the one year when it was during COVID, when it was in September, that was an experience.
Yeah.
Get on ADV Fest in Mojave. I haven't been to South Dakota, but I'm hoping to go this year. Obviously, I hosted the Dork camp out, so I went to that one. I was there. I went to one day of Chris's Get Lost Find Yourself event until, we had to come home really
Lost
fast. And
Trav.
then I went right back again in a car. That the Dual Sport Summer Opener that year, Pacific Northwest Dual Sport. And obviously what we're talking about is mostly West Coast PNW because that's where we live. And then I was really lucky last year to get invited to the Alpinestars Adventure Tour. That was in Big Bear, California. But I was like hanging out with from MotoGeo and Skylar Howes and Toby Price and Ricky Brayback was there, and just like all these guys from major motorcycle magazines. And I'm just looking around like, am I at the wrong party? I have a great story about that, by the way. I should tell it because I'm going to forget.
Please
So
tell.
it's just at this it's in this really small town called Fawnskin outside of Big Bear, and like it's a tiny town, like 800 people or something. And I like went into the bathroom because there was just a bunch of outhouses there. I was doing business, and I came out, and there's this guy in a new KLR sitting there who had just pulled in because he saw like a motorcycle thing going on. He didn't know what it was. And he sees me come out of the bathroom and does like the biggest double take, and his face goes, "Dork in the road?" Like I was the last person he expected to see coming out of that bathroom at a random event that he randomly pulled into the driveway of. And he was like, "Oh my God, I bought this bike because of you." And it was, and
I love that.
That dude made that trip. I mean, it was a great time anyway, but that's the highlight. I was hanging out with all these professionals, and that guy was the highlight of the trip for me. So thanks, random dude on the KLR in California. But this is the best experience I've ever had coming out of a porta potty. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's. I think that is kind of the best part of rallies, though, is one, you get to make new friends and meet people, but two, just coming from somebody who has a much smaller cult following, I do really enjoy meeting people that I don't know that follow along with what I do. I think it's so humbling in a good way to like, and I guess inspiring for me too, to know that like other people enjoy my travels and riding and whatever else. And it's a really nice chance to just connect with everybody. But yeah, kind of off your point, Ben, with the PNW California thing, I think the tough thing about rallies is you kind of do sometimes stick to what's close by you because, and Ben, you've done this way more than I have, but like hauling your bikes and your camp gear and all this other stuff, especially with, unfortunately, how gas prices are right now or have been in the past, it gets so expensive so quickly. And we have such good riding out here. It's just kind of silly to not take advantage of it and hit the rallies we do have that are close by.
Yeah, worth mentioning. I don't know that we did. There's multiple ways to attend a rally. So
yes,
I usually bring my comfortable sleeping accommodations and haul my bike there. And it also makes it so I can bring a smaller bike and enjoy the riding more. But not the majority, but well, maybe I would more than 50%, but not like everyone. A lot of people ride their bikes, set up camp, and so they have to go out and do the riding there on the bike that they're on. And there's nothing wrong with that because generally the events and the trail or the routes are designed for that. But you can do it either way. So you can stay in an RV, or I slept on my cargo trailer, and this year I may even be sleeping in my 4Runner. and haul your bike, or you can ride there and camp off of your bike. Either way, you get all the gear off the bike and ride it unfettered. But yeah, I don't know that we covered that specifically, so thank you for bringing that up.
And again, there are different accommodations based on where you are. Yeah, the smaller rallies, you're camping most of the time. Bigger rallies, you can even do hotel if you're one of those people that just needs a bed, which I know there's definitely people like that. And I think Get On ADV Fest usually does a good job of making sure there's hotels nearby. You just, in those situations, just know if you haven't done rallies before and you want to, you're going to need to go to the bigger ones to have hotel access. But I usually ride in on my bike and camp off the bike. Your stuff is safe at the rallies. They usually do a really good job of just kind of keeping an eye on everything. So don't feel like leaving your camp is going to be a risk factor. I've never had any issue at a camp ever with rallies. So I don't think that should be a problem. I should probably knock on wood though. Otherwise something bad's going to happen this year.
They don't generally let people in that aren't attending. So.
No. But yeah, I envy Ben sometimes because he'll show up with 2 bikes and he's got this really comfy trailer to sleep in and whatever else. And we've had weather, especially at Giant Loop, because in Oregon in June, you just never know what you're going to get. And I think the last 2 years we've had like insane winds and rain. And if you're in a tent, it can get a little cold and pretty wet pretty quickly.
Thunderstorms and crazy wind. Yeah, I was holding my awning down. Like Lance and I were both holding it down. The wind was blowing so hard, but I was holding it was out because I was trying to stay out of the rain.
Yeah.
So it's a whole trade-off. So which of the rallies you've been to is your favorite? I think you sort of said it already.
I think the reason I said Giant Loop, and I think the reason that the Giant Loop rally is my favorite is because, one, I'm biased because that's essentially my favorite area of Oregon. And so getting to be there and ride motorcycles is always very fun for me. But 2, it's a big rally that feels small because we're all camping in one spot. Crane Hot Springs is a beautiful location, but it's basically one giant campground. So everyone, including the vendors and including, kind of everybody working there, everybody is just all up in each other's space. So you have to kind of be friendly no matter what. And you could be sitting with the Harley Davidson demo guys one night and then with Ben the next night and then with the VB40 veterans another night. It's just, you have such a nice combination of people there and you really get to know people from all different sides of adventure riding and adventure sports in general. And it's really fun. It's strangely intimate, which is why I enjoy it so much.
Title of your sex tape.
Yeah. Well,
Giant Loop's my favorite too. I mean, maybe I'm biased. It was my first, and I know everyone there, but I think a big part of that one, everyone is more social and friendly and interactive there, and that's part of how you say it's a big rally that feels small. And I think a big part of that is the beer is free, so everyone's got a little social lubricant flowing. And which, in moderation is great. And I really do think that it just contributes to people kind of wandering from table to table and not only meeting each other like in the evenings, but also then being like, well, where are you riding tomorrow? Let's get together. Let's go. Oh, I wanted to go to Alvord too. Like I see that a ton. The groups get progressively bigger as the days go on because you meet people and you want to ride with them the next day. So if you want to go to a rally your first time by yourself or even with a friend, the Giant Loop's a great one to start with because it's pretty low key. There's free beer and people are generally very friendly.
Also,
so Giant Loop's,
we're forgetting the best part, which is there's a hot spring that you get to soak in every day. So you can have a really hard day of riding and then go sit in the hot spring and you feel like $1,000,000 afterwards. And it's fun. And the hot spring is big enough too that honestly, like it does get crowded a certain time of day, but like not to the degree you would imagine. And it's kind of a nice bonus feature of that weekend. It makes a huge difference for me at least.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning out there that this is turning into a giant commercial, isn't it? That they have a giant man-made pool that's like bigger than an Olympic swimming pool with a gravel bottom where they pump the water in. So you're not like just sitting in some random hole in the ground with strangers. Like it's a very nice setup. They have showers and changing rooms and all of that.
Yeah.
So I think Giant Loop is my favorite for camaraderie, but riding-wise, I think Touratech might be my favorite just because there's so much epic stuff. Some of the best views I've seen ever are there. And so there's some really good riding around that area.
I will say I do love the ADV Rally in Julian. And one of the reasons why I do love that rally is because it's a scavenger hunt. And so you do get to kind of experience some different types of terrain, which is great. And it's varying in that as well, in that like you can have all pavement if you want to, you can take some gnarly off-road, or you can just do some kind of like forest road type of stuff. And it's really wonderful. It kind of sets you up with a goal. It also kind of adds that little competitive edge, which is really just
Right.
kind of a good time. And in the last couple of years when I've gone, I've competed with teams of women, and we've had so much fun because usually we're like the only team of women that are there. There's obviously other women there riding, but it's always a blast. And it just, again, like that's what makes that rally in particular unique. And so if you do have a little bit more of a competitive edge, and you really kind of like that Southern California vibe, which it's beautiful out there, I highly recommend looking into that for next November.
As long as you don't mind sand.
Yes.
Don't go to
Oh, the
SoCal if you
sand.
hate sand.
Yeah.
Unavoidable.
It's absolutely everywhere down there. And let me tell you, I hadn't been in much sand last fall, and I hopped in like deep sand for the first time in a while. Felt like I forgot how to ride for a second.
On a Pan America, it's worth
Yeah.
mentioning.
Yeah. It's a little heavy. Yeah.
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 So what's the best part of rallies for you?
The best part of rallies for me is what you would probably expect. It's just kind of meeting people and networking. Usually, when I am at a rally, I am always walking around talking to people. And that's because the rallies for me are my time to touch base with all of my people in the ADV world, whether it's the Alpinestars guys, whether it's hanging out with Ben and the ADV crew that's kind of in the Pacific Northwest, or connecting with people and trying to set up projects for the next year. You know, one of the best parts for me of Giant Loop last year was one, I got to hang around with the VB40 guys, and then I actually shot a documentary with them throughout the month of June. And then I also got to hang out with the Public Land Stewards guys, who I now am a member of and I'm a volunteer with, and I'm shooting a documentary for them too. So it's a great opportunity to meet people, to get opportunities, but also just to hang out with people you don't get to see all the time, you know? I obviously get to see Ben quite a bit, but we have other really close friends of ours that I only get to see a couple times a year because we live in different cities, and it's just not always easy to get places. Like, for example, you and Trav and I were supposed to go to the Triumph event on Sunday, and are we all going to make it? We're not sure because snow. So yeah, I think for me, it's just peopling. It's just having the opportunity to talk with people, to connect with people, and share love of motorcycles, which we all do, and which really kind of keeps everybody together, essentially.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, my favorite part of any camping trip is chilling around the campfire at night and just BSing in various states of coherence with friends and people you don't get to see. It's nice to have kind of all the people that you talk to and interact with in the same place.
Yeah.
So chilling and laughing by the fire is probably my favorite, no matter where I'm at. And then riding cool places. They're always somewhere cool with cool stuff to see. Obviously, that's a big part of it. And then, like you were saying, I've met a ton of people, made great business contacts, and just contacts in general, friends and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's always fantastic for me. But on the flip side, what's the worst part of rallies for you?
I guess it's kind of a tie. I'm going to say the first one is there's usually not a reliable, and by reliable, I mean hot shower that's convenient. That can get a little tricky, especially if you're getting out riding all day and you get kind of gross. You know, you just never, it's variable conditions for showers, which can get, it's just kind of a pain. The only other thing I don't like, and that kind of wears on me a bit, is usually food. I am not a picky eater, to be very, very honest. I will eat just about anything. But sometimes you run into situations where if you're kind of paying ahead of time and food is provided, it's not quite what you expect. It's pretty like kind of standard going through the lunch line in high school type of vibe sometimes, which is a-okay. But that would be probably the one thing for me that I have a hard time with, is just I like to have decent food, and sometimes it's pretty just bare minimum passable, in my opinion. Now, I will say free beer at Giant Loop, always a win. Always helps me forget about the food issue 110%. But that would be mine.
You don't need
What's
to
yours?
eat. There's a pork chop in every can.
Or that's
Carbs and all kinds of nutrients.
Also true.
Yeah. I mean, the worst part for me is trying to sleep when douchebags are shaking my trailer, Chris.
Chris.
But honestly, it's a lot of peopling, and if you're an introvert or someone with social anxiety, there's a person everywhere you go. You're surrounded by people, and so if you sort of have to go in with the mindset that you're going to embrace that and understand that it's part of the experience. You can escape to your own little corner, your own little campsite, your own little tent. Most of the time, no matter what the size of the rally is, you can always kind of get away. Just know that there's going to be people around and on top of you. I haven't had a lot of problems with like people partying late into the night or anything, even
No.
though they're super close. But at ADV rallies, the crowd tends to be a little older. I went to the Desert 100 last year, and it was a much younger crowd. And well, they were literally partying, a bunch of college kids next to us till 3:30 in the morning.
Oh my
But
God.
earplugs—that's why they were invented.
Yes.
But yeah, the whole you're right on top of your neighbors thing can be a little complicated. It's not, you're not camping. Like, you're sleeping in a field with 1,000 people. You're not camping.
Yeah.
It has all the discomfort of camping, but none of the fun advantages of being in the woods by yourself.
Right. Definitely bring earbuds for the evening. Yeah, I would also recommend that. Also because, like, depending on where you're camping with weather and animals, even, you just don't know how loud stuff is going to be, and it's just better to be safe ahead of time. Yeah, Ben, I do think it's funny that one of the things that I love the most is one of the things that I think wears you out the most, which is peopling.
Yeah, well, you are an extrovert and I am not. So
I know.
that's textbook. It's textbook.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I know.
I actually really enjoy it though, and it's one of those it's one of those times when I actually look forward to interacting with a lot of people, and that is rare for me. So
yeah,
I actually like that part of it. It just exhausts me. It's very tiring.
It is. And honestly, like, even as an extrovert, I will say that is something to be prepared for going into a rally weekend, is you're going to be so tired afterwards. Because that excitement, that adrenaline, not just from riding, but from being around all those people all weekend, it's like going to a festival weekend for a concert.
Yeah,
like,
exactly like
you
that.
are so engaged and overstimulated, and then you get home and it's just so make sure when you're planning, plan to get home and have a good night of sleep if you have to go to work on Monday, or at least just have like an afternoon to decompress, because you will be tired. You will also be dehydrated. Make sure you're trying to drink as much water as possible. I know that gets difficult at some of these events too.
Yeah, there's no shame in rolling out early on the last day. Nobody's really doing anything anyway.
Yeah.
So good. On the topic of advice, damn, she did it again. So what tips or advice would you give to someone who has never been, or someone who has anxiety about going to an event like this? Because it can be over. I was actually super anxious before I went to my first one. I made Duck Fan come with me. I didn't know what to expect. I was, and I was presenting. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to people who haven't been, that are thinking about going but maybe apprehensive?
I would just say, first of all, if you are somebody that is a little bit socially anxious, know that you're not the only one. I even get a little like, ooh, here we go before these weekends, because it's a lot of people, and it's a lot of social engagement. And we're getting a little bit less of that, I think, post-pandemic. So just know you're not the only one. Everyone's going to be a little like nervy the first day. Don't be afraid to go say hi and introduce yourself. That's why everybody's there. So that would be my first piece of advice, is don't be afraid to go say hi, whether it's to a Ben or to somebody else you kind of recognize from, maybe somewhere else you've done a ride, or even if it's just your neighbor that you're camping next to. Some of my favorite people that I've gotten to ride with have been the people that have camped next to me. And it's great. It's just a nice opportunity to meet new people. So just keep that in mind ahead of time. Another piece of advice I would give is bring snacks that you like for yourself, because, even if meals are provided, you're not really guaranteed to have awesome, filling food all the time. And if you are somebody that's getting out there and doing big rides, you need to make sure you're staying fueled up. So bring snacks, water. I always say electrolytes. I drink a ton of electrolytes to stay hydrated. And last, just make sure you bring wet wipes. That's all I'm saying. Always wet wipes all the time, whether it's just, you're out dusty, whatever else, or, you're gross camping. I'm just telling you, wet wipes are the way to go.
Yeah, and these are always in the summer, so you're a little sweaty.
Yeah.
And then dust and sunscreen and sweat form of paste. Like my beard is just disgusting by the last day.
A
Like it
paste.
is so. It's like in the Santa Claus too when they clone him and make a toy and he
Yeah,
just
and
has
it's
the big latex beard. That's what it feels like to me.
yeah.
It's like one solid piece. It's a unibeard.
Oh my god, I love it.
Yeah, Grace covered it all, but I would say you're all there for the same reason, and it's just
Yeah,
like going to any other riding event. You have the perfect opening line. What are you riding? What do you ride? Right?
yeah,
What motorcycle do you have? You can walk up to someone's motorcycle and just have a conversation with them, and that opens so many doors and
yeah,
conversations. But where are you riding tomorrow? Oh, are you
yeah,
in a group or so? That's a thing. And the segues into my next question about going alone. Like, can it be done? Can you go alone? What tips do you have for people who are going alone? My number one tip, I'm gonna let you finish, but my number one tip is booze. Walk around with an open bottle of whiskey. You make a lot of friends.
yes, 100%. The first couple rallies I went, first 3 rallies I went to ever, I went alone, and I had a great time. Granted, I'm an extrovert, but one of the ways that I kind of got by was I would just go up and introduce myself and just say, what are you riding? What type of riding do you like doing? You know, just kind of get into the groove of things and whatever else. And it's super easy once you kind of get through that initial tension of like, holy shit, I really just don't know that anybody here and I'm on my own. But I also agree with Ben. If you have booze, you're going to make friends fast, especially with these guys that are at these events and gals. I mean, myself, like I love a good whiskey just as much as Ben does. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you're surrounded by like-minded people.
Yeah.
You have the ultimate easy thing to talk about. It's great to go to a convention or whatever where you're all there for the same reason because you can just talk about that thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of these rallies, another tip would be take advantage of because people know this, the organizers know this. So like at Touratech, they just have literal rally points, yes, pun intended, in the morning where you're like, well, I want to ride Chumstick. And you go meet up with 8 other people that want to ride Chumstick and you ride with them all day. And by the end of the day, you're all friends. So then you
Yeah.
got somebody to hang out with.
Yeah.
And the smaller rally, that's a bigger rally. The smaller rallies are great for going alone because everyone hangs out together anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
But
Yeah.
I would suggest if you're really, really, really anxious, find a friend to go with so you have that person to hang out with, even if it's just somebody that you kind of know online and you're planning on meeting up there or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That safety security blanket is nice.
It's so nice. Also, just if I'm ever at a rally and somebody's there and you're feeling anxious and you don't know anybody, please come over and say hi. I'm very happy to hang out, point you in the right direction if you need a riding group, etc. I know Ben's the same way. You know, it's just always pretty much no matter what, the more the merrier. Obviously, with riding
Hey,
skill sets
dog.
that differentiate, Starbuck being a butthead.
She's squeaking her toy at me.
Hi, honey. But yeah, I just say, just don't be afraid to come say hi to me, to Ben, to anybody.
Yeah, I reiterate that. Definitely don't be afraid to go say hi to Grace.
Yes. Yeah.
No,
I know.
please come up. Say I like.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel
He
like I'm
does.
the freaking mayor at these things because I just get to talk to so many people and I don't have to initiate anything. So it's
Yeah.
super nice when you're an introvert when people come up to you.
I will say, as Ben's friend, it's really kind of, I will give you a compliment, Ben. It's remarkable to watch Ben because he's so good with people. And Ben will have some of the most random and sometimes strange humans come up and have conversations. For the most part, everybody's amazing, but there are definitely random ones. And he handles it with such grace and such ease. You would never have any idea that this man ever had social anxiety. And he's so kind to people. So, I don't know. It's very cool to see your friends kind of in their element. And Ben is in particular definitely the mayor at a lot of these. There are so many people that come over and are just like Dork in the road. And it's great to see you in your element. I really enjoy it. And it's always entertaining too, to a certain degree.
Well, that's nice of you to say. And I am anxious about whether or not I'm handling it correctly, but I am just so grateful and like astounded that anyone would want to talk to me that I'm just like, also I just try to be a nice person in general. Okay, well,
for the most part, you're doing pretty great.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So we're running low on time here, so
It's true.
let's talk about your best or funniest or most interesting stories from rallies. Do you have a good rally story for me?
Well, I think it's worth bringing up the Chris story because it continuously comes up
Did
all
you see
the
it on my
time.
list? You don't want. You're trying to get ahead of me, so I don't tell it.
No, I just feel like everyone needs to hear it from my perspective for once.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of my favorite parts about the first giant loop rally I went to is, one, I got to meet and hang out with Ben, but two, we had a whole bunch of other friends kind of from that were kind of newer to the influencer world in the Pacific Northwest that came to the rally. And one of them was Chris Crittermoto. And I just really felt at home with these guys, and we all got out. I think it was arrival day was when we did the Alvord ride, and it was a big group of people. It was very fun. But we gassed up at this little gas station that's about 3 miles from Crane, and Chris, being the wonderful gentleman he was, actually filled my tank for me.
He's still a gentleman.
Yes, he's wonderful.
And he's not dead.
No, he's still with us, much to my mistake here. But anyway, so I ended up kind of chit-chatting with Chris after he got my gas, because he's wonderful. And he was basically telling me I'm going to stay in the back because he was on his 250 and that thing just can't keep up with everybody else. And I was kind of like, yeah, I'll stay in the back with you. Like, you know, I'll keep an eye on you, whatever else. And so we're all taking off as a group, and I'm kind of like eyeing Chris behind me. And as we're taking off, I'm kind of like, well, I guess he's just going to hang back there for a minute, because he wasn't getting on his bike and leaving with the group. And I was already getting behind. So I was like, all right, well, I guess he'll just catch up with us when we get to the Alvord turn, because there's a very distinct turn you make to go out to the Alvord. And Chris just never caught up and never caught up and never caught up. And I, of course, in my head am blaming the fact that he's on his 250, but you know, when we stop as a group, he'll be able to make up the time. And he never did. And that's because Chris's battery died on his bike at the gas station right as we were all leaving. But I didn't notice. There was no waving of hands. There was no, hey, like I'm stuck here. It was just, he just was kind of standing there with his motorcycle, not really putting his gear on. And I was just kind of like, oh, I guess he's going to chill. So essentially after that, I have been known as the one who left Chris behind. And I would just like to say that it was a slight error of judgment on my part. I still to this day feel terrible about it, and it haunts my dreams. So Chris, I love you. I will never leave you behind again. And I promise that I'll make up for it continuously for the rest of my life.
Yeah, extenuating circumstances, and not that I'm not about to rake you over the coals, because I will a little. But that group was way too big. Like, there's a reason why I don't want it. Was like literally 20 people. I do not like to go out in a group bigger than 6. And when the group is bigger than that, I always this is what we did at my camp out, split them into smaller groups, squads or whatever. So you're responsible for keeping an eye on the people in your team, your squad, because it is impossible to tell the difference between 19 and 20 people rolling together down the road. It is very difficult to tell the difference. So I'll give you that. 2, Chris volunteered to sweep. So if you don't know the parlance, I'm using parlance a lot lately. I think it's the word of the week.
Love that word.
The sweep rider is usually the one that is least likely to crash. So one of the most experienced riders, because they ride in the back. And if anyone else has a problem, they catch up to them, they stay with them, they help them solve the problem. Well, that's all well and good, except when it's your sweep rider that has the problem. Now, those are the 2 nice things I've said, that it makes it not Grace's fault. However, we all should know by now that we are responsible for the person behind us, and it's more important than ever when you're in a huge group, right? You got to make sure that person's back there and stop and wait for them, because they can't catch up if they have a problem. You just have to notice that they're not there. So it is weird. We didn't know what happened. He was fine. And the other thing is, it's not like we were in a dangerous place. We were at a gas station. No. It's not like if we were in the middle of nowhere and you abandoned him like that and didn't go back for him, that's one thing. Him sitting at a gas station where he got a jump start and just went back to camp and did his own thing the rest of the day is a complete other.
Yeah. Yep. No, I feel terrible. It still, again, haunts me to this day, because I literally was just in that mindset of, well, he said he was going to take his time on his 250. Who, no big deal.
Right. Well, and there's just, everyone's leaving. That's the other reason why a big group is stupid, because the front of the pack starts leaving and the people in the back may not even be ready.
Yeah, which is actually what was happening. Was Chris was still putting gear on.
Right.
And when you're in a big group like that, everybody's just hustling to stay together. And unless you're in like a touring group, you are going to lose people, I swear, if you're in that big of a pack. Yeah. But
whoever was leading that group should have waited for Chris to get his gear on.
Oh yeah, Ben, who was leading that group?
Some asshole, obviously.
I think he's the guy staring back at me right now, actually.
I think I was leading. I was very nervous about the group being that big. So I was like in front, but I wasn't in charge, if that makes sense.
You were
Because if I was
definitely
in
in
charge,
charge.
we would have had a much smaller group. No, it was just a bunch of people following me,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
not
that's
exactly
true.
what I had in mind.
Yeah. It was fun.
Uh,
We had a good time.
yeah, it was good. I think that's a fun story. I have another terrible story,
Yes.
actually,
Yeah.
of sometimes the route. This is a good cautionary tale. Sometimes the route descriptions are not as complete as they should be. Sometimes they're written. So remember that riding is subjective and difficulty is subjective. People have different. People say something's easy, and it varies based on their riding experience. It changes based on what bike they're riding. So whoever evaluated this particular track was clearly on a light bike and a good rider. The one that goes out the south end of the Alvord towards Fields, and I was in a group of 6 or 8 of us that decided instead of just going back to the road, we were going to go out and take the rest of this track. Well, there's a 20-foot sand dune out there on this track that's not mentioned in the route description at all. It's just like, oh, you can go out the south end and go to Fields. And it was like 6 or probably 6 of us, all of us on big bikes. Smallest bike there was a Scrambler 1200, but most of us were on that. No, there was a KLR. But other than that, it was Africa Twins, like 3 or 4 Africa Twins, the
Yeah.
Scrambler 1200, and we got in way over our heads fast. And the track turned, but I was like, that can't be the track because it goes over the sand dune. There's no way. So we start following another road, and we had to go through some deep sand pits, and that was the time I dropped my Africa Twin on my leg, and like McLovin had to come pull it off of me. And by the time, and we kept trying to navigate out, and all the tracks were shitty and sandy. And finally, I was just like, why did we not turn around and go back? So we finally did. And by the time I got to the road, like my water was empty. I was gassed. Like, you think I would have learned a lesson about that before I went out to section 1 this year? I sort of did. I took electrolytes this year. By the way, the whole leaving someone behind thing, I know someone's going to chime in with, well, you left Trav in the desert. And I didn't, but I couldn't get back to him the first time, and I clearly went back to him for the second time. So
Yeah.
you don't know exactly what happened. Actually,
Yeah.
I'll just tell you because it's a short story. There was a really shitty downhill, pretty difficult. So 1, I was reluctant to go back up it if I didn't have to, and then 2, 4 overland rigs came down it behind us, and I could not have gotten around them anyway. And by the time they cleared us, Trav was already situated, but it took a very long time. So I didn't purposely not go back for him. I just wasn't able to, and I wish I had known that he was stuck, but he waved us on because I thought he was just screwing with his camera. Same thing. So I guess I have to forgive you.
Ah, see, look at that.
Because
Also,
you left him at a gas station, and I apparently left Trav in the middle of the desert to die.
and sometimes you just have those moments where you're like, they'll catch up. And especially if it's somebody you're used to riding with. Like,
Right.
I know you and Trav ride together a lot. So that's, for me and Chris, it was a little different. I should have been a little more patient and, just stay behind. But also just a PSA for everybody. The policy for going back for your friends is very similar to the mask policy on an airplane, which is put yours on first and then the person next to you. Very similar with the ADV stuff, which is if it's not safe right away in the moment to get back to them, you need to take your safety into accountability first. Obviously, you need to get to your person if they're injured or hurt or they're stuck, whatever else, but don't do it compromising your own safety. Ben obviously needed to wait a little bit to make sure he had traffic go by and whatever else. There's a lot of moments like that where you just can't make an immediate decision. So just know that you shouldn't be compromising yourself to get back there. Obviously there's those emergency situations where you need to do your best to get there as soon as possible. But again, just keep that in mind when you're out there, because if something then happens to you, then you're both screwed,
Right. You think one rescue is complicated.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's twice as complicated.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a good point. That's a great point to end on. I'm sorry we only had crappy stories, but it's 53 minutes. So, Grace, thank you. Again, your expertise and effervescence is always so refreshing, and I'm just so lucky to be here with you. Why don't you tell us where other people can be with you and follow you on the internet?
Everyone can find me on the Instagrams and the YouTubes under The Graceful Renegade. I will be there hanging out and waiting for all of my new friends and followers. Ben, where can everybody find you?
Well, I spend the majority of my time trying to be your internet riding buddy on YouTube, Dork on the Road YouTube, which is where the name of the podcast came from. And also I'm on Instagram, Dork on the Road, and I will throw up, no pun intended, a TikTok now and then. So Dork on the Road on TikTok. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. We hope that you'll subscribe, follow, whatever it is you do here on whatever platform you're listening or watching us on.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. As always, live wild, ride free.
And please do not forget to be excellent to each other.
Bye.
There. Can't find my cursor. There it is.